Hi, and welcome to Design Tab. My name is Montague Monroe, and in today's tutorial we will be taking a look at responsive frameworks, what they do, and how to begin using them in your web designs. In the past, websites were commonly made using fixed width elements to create their websites, which meant that on a regular monitor it would look fairly good. But as more and more different size screens and different web-able devices became common, there grew a need to have an adaptable layout that would look nice regardless of the viewer's resolution screen. One of the most popular responses to this program is responsive frameworks. Responsive frameworks can be created from scratch using CSS breakpoints, but there are a few great frameworks available for free on the web. Frameworks such as Zerb's Foundation and Twitter Bootstrap are among the most popular. In this tutorial, we will be taking a look at Twitter Bootstrap, how to incorporate it into a new website design, as well as how to utilize the kit to create your responsive website. So to start with, let's take a look at Bootstrap and go through a couple of the things that it offers. If you go and open up your browser and go to getbootstrap.com, you'll be greeted with the Twitter Bootstrap website. Along the menu bar, go to Getting Started, and this will take you through a quick way to get Bootstrap into your project. So, first of all, it offers you the option to download Bootstrap. So what we're going to do is click this button, wait for a sec, and we will put Bootstrap into our Sites folder, and we should just rename this to, well, we'll keep it for now, just so we can, for versioning. So let's go save, and let's download. So now we have Bootstrap installed on our computer. Let's have a look at some of the basic ways to get started with Bootstrap. If we go down here, you will notice that we also have CDN options. This basically is an option where instead of downloading the Bootstrap files yourself, you can just put this link into your HTML file and use an online version of Bootstrap. We, however, are not going to utilize this in this tutorial. We're going to be using the files directly in our project. Below, it'll tell you what is included in Bootstrap. Inside Bootstrap, you'll have three folders. You're going to have a CSS folder, a JavaScript folder, and a fonts folder. Inside the CSS folder, you'll have our basic bootstrap.css, as well as a minified version for production environments. You also have an optional theme, if you would like to use it. If you do choose to use the theme, you can just include it in your index.html underneath bootstrap.css. Inside our JavaScript folder, we have our standard JavaScript Bootstrap file, as well as a minified version. As for the fonts, these are just going to be, you just include them in the folder, you don't need to do much with them. Okay, just a note here, please note that jQuery is required in order to use Bootstrap, if you plan to be using the JavaScript functionality of it. So, here we have a basic template that will just basically get you started with Bootstrap and have everything installed. So what we're going to do is create a new project, copy and paste this starter template in, and take a look at what it does. So first of all, let's copy this, and then open up our command prompt. Let's go into our sites folder, or wherever you keep your websites, and create a new folder called Boot for Bootstrap. Then let's cd into boot, and let's open up this folder in our default editor. So here we are. Now what we want to do is create a new file, and we want to paste in our HTML, and then save it, and we want to save it into boot as index.html. Lovely. So let's have a look at what we have here. First of all, we have our HTML. and then our head and body. Inside the head we have our title, which shows up in the top tabs of your browser. We have a couple of small things here. This one here is to help with Bootstrap recognizing your device's width, and it helps with the responsiveness. You'll see here we have a link to bootstrap.min.css. So this is basically saying this is linking directly to our bootstrap.css file, the minified version. In our body we just have a simple h1 tag saying hello world, and underneath we have a CDN link to jQuery. You can replace this with a local jQuery if you want to, but this just basically will go on the net and pull in jQuery for us without us having to download it and include it in our project. And finally, you'll see we have a link to our Bootstrap JavaScript file, the minified version. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is go to our downloaded Bootstrap, and we will show in Finder, and we just want to okay, so we have a CSS file, a fonts file, and a JavaScript file. So all we're going to want to do is copy all three of these, go into our boot file, and then just paste them in. And if we have a look at our thing, you'll see it'll look inside the CSS folder, which is now here, and look for bootstrap.min.css, which is right here. And it should work with the rest too. So let's take this opportunity to open up our new website inside our browser and have a look at what we're greeted with. So we're going to go to localhost, and wherever you put your website, and here we go. You'll see we have hello world, and it looks different to the default Chrome text, and this is an easy way to just tell if the fonts are working, and CSS and everything should be working quite well. Okay, so now we're going to want to start using Bootstrap to build our website. This is what you'll be spending 99% of the time in Bootstrap doing. And the first thing we're going to want to create is a navbar, because we'd like a navigation at the top of our new responsive website. So let's go into Sublime Text, and let's delete our h1. Now, in order to put a navbar, let's have a look through Bootstrap's API and see what they offer us for this. Let's go along to Components, and then if we scroll down we can see all the stuff we can have. Stuff like icons, drop downs, button groups, input groups, navs, navbar. Navbar is what we want. So here's our default navbar, and you'll see it has a brand for us, links, drop down items, searches, all that sort of stuff. Very handy and powerful for your navbars. So this is basically a simple template that we can copy and paste and get ourselves a simple navbar. So let's copy it, go over to our Sublime Text, and pop it in the body. Now I'll just fix up our, whoops, here we go. Just fix up our indentation a little bit, make sure it all looks nice. There we go. Alright, so this is quite large for our navbar, but it basically includes a couple of default things, like our brand, links, drop downs, all that sort of stuff. Alrighty, so that's the first bit done. Next up, we're going to want to create some content for our website. I decided the best thing to do for this website is to create a 2-column layout. In the first column, I want a table with names, and in the second column, I want to create a form by which I can add names to the table. So let's get started on that. We'll leave our navbar as we are, but just know that you can edit any of these as you like, adding and removing them, just by editing the code here. So for instance, let's say I wanted to rename our brand to something else. If we scroll through here and take a look, you'll see in the first bit, navbar header, we have our brand right here, and I'd like to change this to Bootstrap instead. So let's save it, go back, and reload, and you'll see we now have Bootstrap instead of brand. Alrighty. One thing to note about the Twitter Bootstrap navigation and why it's a good thing to use is, first of all, it will immediately show us how to use our responsiveness. If we slowly go down, you'll see it still looks good, and then when we get to a certain point, you will notice a change. There we go. Now this is great because it is very handy for mobile devices. When it gets down to a tablet or mobile device size, you'll get this button here instead of our navigation items. If you click it, you'll see it will animate down, and we have all of our navigation items here. This is you may have seen this before if using a mobile to browse the web. It's a very handy little substitute, and it keeps our header looking nice. Alrighty, so let's move on to our two-column layout. Now, Bootstrap offers a great way of creating two-column layouts, and it's very easy to do. If we go into here, and we'll go underneath our navigation item, and we want to create a new div with a class of container. Now, what container does basically is anything inside a container will be centered on our page. So it won't be to the left or to the right, it'll be nice and in the middle. And it also sets us up for setting up our divs inside and our two-column layout. So we're going to first go into the Bootstrap API and have a look at what we can do with our grid. Because Bootstrap is a responsive grid system, we can have a look at the grid system here, and it'll basically take us through a lot of information on what we can do. The easiest way to work this out is just go straight down to our first example, stack to horizontal. And what we see here is we basically have a div with a row, and inside that we have columns. So for this one here we have one row, and we have a column of 8 and a column of 4. And a full width row is always 12 columns. So if you want to fill up a row, you can do it in any combination as long as it adds up to 12. For instance here, you'll see we have a row which separates it from the one above and below. We have a 12 column total, and inside that we have two divs, one 8 columns, one 4 columns. The one that goes first will be on the left, and the one that goes second will be on the right. And this is the best way to get things horizontal and not underneath each other. So let's get started and do this right now. First of all, let's open up our Sublime Text, and we will have a div with a class of row. Whoops, gotta remember to put in there. And then we want two more divs. One with a class of, and I'll explain this now, we have col md1. So basically this is saying column, and MD stands, I believe, for medium device desktops. So we can, if you want to go crazy and have your specific layout for every single different device, then you can actually target specifics. Otherwise, it will try its best to make it look nice and save you time. And then 1 here is for how many columns we like. So what we want to do is col md6. Whoops. And we'll copy this and paste it underneath. Now we have two columns that are each two divs that are each 6 columns, adding to a total of 12. So in here, I suppose I will just put in div 1 and then div 2. If we go into our template and refresh, you will see we have div 1 and div 2. If we were to, I'll make this a little bit more obvious. First of all, I will create a new file. What we're doing here is creating a new CSS document by which we can mess around with the styles a little bit and show you how it looks. So we want to save this as style.css, and then inside of our header, underneath Bootstrap, we want a new link, and we want it to be style.css. That should be all good. Perfect. Now inside our style, we want to target these two divs. The easiest way to do that, for now, is just copy the class and then put it in here, and this will add styles on top of the ones already done. And we want to say background color should be equal to something like 1e, 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 just so it's easy to see. And we also want to give it a border. Whoops. And we'll say 1 pixels, solid, and then we'll just say black. Alrighty. Now, if we refresh the page, oh, that's a little bit. I might replace this one here with a slightly lighter color. Let's go for something like that. Whoops. Okay, now you can see our two divs. They're each been outlined in black and colored in grey. And you see they're each 6 pixels, so they're the same size, width, and they're next to each other. So this is our two columns right here, and we can put whatever we like inside. This is very handy. Okay, so next up we're going to want to create our table, and we'll be putting our table into our left column. We'll be putting our form into our right. So what's the first thing I want to do? The first thing I want to do is, well, let's remove these styles, because frankly they don't really look that nice, and now that we understand how it's going, we shouldn't have a problem understanding the rest. So tables. Now we're going to want to have a look at what CSS can, what Bootstrap can give us for tables. If we go through here, we'll see our tables. And Bootstrap offers some really, really well formatted tables that are very easy to work with. We have our basic table, and all we need to do is give it a class of table. You'll see here, this is what we will get. Next up, we can have striped rows, and if you look carefully, it might be a little bit hard to see. It slightly fades in a cream into every odd row. We also have bordered tables, if you like borders, and hover rows. This is the one I like. It gives us our standard table, but if we hover our mouse over any of the elements, it will highlight it for us, so it's easy to tell. This is the one I want to use. So let's begin putting this table into our new project. Inside our index.html, we will remove our h1 tag and get ready to create our table. So let's throw a table element in there and give it the class of table, and I believe the other one was table hover. Let's just make sure of that though. Yep, lovely. And inside here, we're going to want a T head as well as a T body. The table head is basically for these large areas up here, and the table body is for everything else. So inside the table head, we're going to want to create a new th, which is basically one of these, and we're going to want to say name. And inside our table body, we're going to put in a row, which is table row, TR for short, and then TD, which stands for table data. And here's where we can put our names. So first I'll put in my name, Montague, and then we will create a few other rows for other people. We'll say 3 or 4. Whoops. Now we'll say Montague Seamus, Rebecca, and we'll just format this out. And our last one will be Tom. Alrighty, so let's have a look at how that's worked. If we go in and refresh our browser, you'll see we now have our nicely little hoverable table, and it looks really nice and very clean. So that's the first part done. Now we want to go on to our form. If we go back to our CSS Bootstrap, let's have a look at what they give us for forms. Here's a good basic example of a form and an example code underneath. You'll see here it says form, role, form. Inside that we have div classes with form group, and this groups together the form elements. Then we have our labels and inputs, label input, checkboxes if we like, and then a button submit at the end. So let's get started trying to put that into our second div. There we go. And we want a form. We'll say role form. Excellent. Now what did we want after that? We wanted our form group, our labels, and inputs. So div class form group, and inside that we want a label. We'll say for, and we'll just give this a name of name box. That looks fine, and we'll just say name, and then we want an input, and we'll say input, and we'll say ID, and inside the ID we'll use name box, which is what we specified above. We also want a type is text. What else would we like? A class of form control. That's an important one. This is the styling form control. I believe that's it. Yep. So without the extra L. And then we probably want a placeholder as well. We'll say enter your name here and save it. And then right before the end of the form, we're going to want to put in a button of type submit, so it fires off the form submit, and then we'll say submit. Let's take a look at our template now. There we go. So you'll see here we have our form, we have our submit button. Let's see what else we can do. We probably want to, first of all, add a little bit to our button. Let's add a class. And I know that Bootstrap gives us some button classes to style buttons. BTN, and then BTN default is the standard one for a nice simple button that you can hover over to submit. And that is looking quite nice at the moment. So now you can see we have our navigation bar with all of our drop downs, searches, links, more drop downs, why not? We have our nice list of people, and we could put somebody's name in there and submit. Of course you would need some kind of backend functionality in order to make it work, but you can see we have the nice layout here. Okay, so the final thing I want to go over today is overriding the Bootstrap styles using another style sheet. Now you'll see here we already have our new style sheet ready, so we can just basically override styles directly. Now you may have noticed I already did override some styles earlier when I made the grey boxes. This is exactly the same thing. So let's say we wanted to make our button.default to be red, for example. It wouldn't look very nice, but we might as well just do it anyway. And we'll say background color red. Now if we go back and refresh the page, it will take everything that has our button default class and make it red. And this overrides the default Bootstrap styles. So if we ever wanted to remove it, we could just remove it from here, refresh, and it will go back to what it was with Bootstrap. And you can do this for anything. The way I like to do this, for example, is if I only wanted to target one thing. Here's a good example here. So let's say I typed in, button, .btn default, and then we said, background color red, right? And that made two buttons red. Let's say I only wanted this one to be red and not this one. The easiest way to do that is to add another class to this button, and we'll just name our own. We'll say button for form 1, just to make sure. And then we'll copy this, and go in here and just replace that there, and then and you'll see it'll only target this extra one while leaving that one alone. This one still inherits all of the other styles because we still have our button default and button in there, and because we've put this one last in the list, it just puts in the ones that it has and overrides. Otherwise it does not mess with them. Okay, so that has been a basic introduction to Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a very powerful responsive framework, as well as a rapid development CSS styling engine. I very much recommend this this framework if you are getting into responsive grid systems and just sort of getting your feet wet with it. If you want a little bit more power, not so much power, but if you want it to be a little bit more customizable and a little bit less flashy in the beginning, I advise you check out Zerb's Foundation. It's a very powerful framework. I love it a lot and I use it very often. Bootstrap is great for getting started. I think after a while you may end up migrating though. Alright guys, well, if you are interested in any other web design tutorials, feel free to come check out designtab.me. We're a new website, but we're slowly beginning to build up our tutorials, and we hope to see you there. Come in and say hi. We have a nice community, a good forum, and lots of tutorials to learn. Alright guys, see you next time.